There's been a lot of talking over the last 24 hours, from De'Aaron Fox talking about his contract and the flaws of the Kings roster on Draymond Green's podcast, to Mike Brown issuing a challenge to De'Aaron Fox at Kings practice today. We'll talk about that, plus a preview of the two games between the Kings and the Lakers beginning tomorrow night with the hosts of the Locked On Lakers podcast. It's all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And initially, this podcast was supposed to be just a full-on Kings-Lakers preview with the Kamenetsky brothers from the Locked On Lakers podcast, but I can't ignore all of the things that have been said over the last 24 hours from a couple of clips that I'm going to play for you of De'Aaron Fox on Draymond Green's podcast, which, as you know, I'm not the biggest fan of Draymond the person. I love Draymond Green the player and the villain. I think it's great for the NBA to have players like Draymond Green or Dylan Brooks in the league for obvious reasons, specifically stomping on the chest of Domantas Sabonis in the playoffs. Not the biggest fan of Draymond. I'm also not the biggest fan of his show, but I like players having shows because we get moments like what we got yesterday is when this podcast was recorded and released. De'Aaron Fox on Draymond Green's show. So I have a couple clips from that. Plus, I wasn't at Kings practice today, but a really, really interesting soundbite from Mike Brown about De'Aaron Fox came out of Kings practice today. We're going to get to all that in this first segment before I get to my Kings-Lakers preview with the Locked On Lakers podcast. But let's start with Fox's contract conversation that he had with Draymond Green. Here's the clip again. This is from Draymond Green's podcast, or the Draymond Green Show with Baron Davis, or whatever they call it. De'Aaron Fox talking about his contract situation in Sacramento and why he chose not to sign his extension.
For me, man, it has all to do with just the team, the organization. Where are we going? I want to make sure that we're in a position to try to win in the future. Because that's ultimately what I want to do. Like, I know I make enough money regardless of where I play or what I do. Like, I'm gonna be fine, unless, God forbid, knock on wood, that you have a career in injury. But aside from that, like, I feel like I'm continuing to get better as a player every year. But for me, are we looking like we're continuing to get better year after year, and are we going to be able to compete at a high level? And that's all mine is. Like, if we can show that this year, like, you sign an extension now. If not, like, obviously I still have another year, but that's where my mindset is. At some point, will we be able to compete for a championship or really compete at a high level for a long time?
So this is nothing new. What we just heard from De'Aaron Fox there is nothing new. It is almost verbatim what he said, and I believe it was a article with The Athletic, either at the very beginning of the season or going into the season. We've had this conversation before. De'Aaron Fox saying that he wants to see what direction the organization is going in, if they are in a position to win, and that influencing his decision to stay and sign an extension or not. These are valid comments, valid concerns, right? And it's, again, nothing that is new to us. Now, if it concerns you at all from the perspective of, oh my God, there's a chance the Kings could lose De'Aaron Fox, I understand that concern completely. But hearing these comments again, and them staying consistent to what we read in the Athletic article, or from De'Aaron's comments earlier in the year, I'm not concerned because I expect this, and it makes perfect sense, especially now that Fox is a member of Clutch Sports. It makes perfect sense for the star player to leverage his power and influence over the organization to get what he wants and make the circumstances beneficial to him as possible. Make no mistake about it, too. De'Aaron Fox also hasn't signed an extension yet because there's a lot of money still to be potentially placed on the table, depending upon how De'Aaron Fox performs, which is a big point that I'm going to get to here in just a second. But any player who wants to put pressure on the organization to do better, to build a group around him, a team around him, a culture around him where winning is not just the priority, which it has been for the last handful of years, but winning is expected or winning is likely. De'Aaron Fox putting pressure on the organization to be the best version of that before he signs on the dotted line, it makes perfect sense. It's not an unrealistic request. It is not a selfish request from De'Aaron Fox by any means. However, that also involves De'Aaron Fox. Like, he can put the pressure on the organization to say, I want to win, but as the star, he is the leader of if that team is winning or not. Now, it's not all completely on his shoulders, and what De'Aaron Fox doesn't want to do is sign an extension with an organization where they say, De'Aaron, the only way we're going to win is because you carry this team and score 70 points a night, right? That's unrealistic, but you get my point. But De'Aaron can control a lot of the outcome that he's looking for, right? If you want to feel like the organization is in more of a state of winning, let's say you want to win right away and win a playoff series before you sign the dotted line so you know this team is capable of getting there, winning there, and hopefully building upon that. If that's what you're looking for short term, you're on this team right now, you can lead this team there, right? So everything that De'Aaron Fox is talking about, not to mention the fact that if he is an all-NBA player, he's eligible for the Supermax contract, which is a difference of literally like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, Fox has the keys now to impact and affect something that he says he's looking for in the contract negotiations. It's good of him to put the pressure on the organization, and this organization should be feeling the pressure right now, not just because they're not winning right now, but because clearly what they're trying to build around De'Aaron Fox is not working, or it has not worked to this point. The Kings have not been able to look like the same team or get back to the same point that they got to 2 years ago when they finally broke their playoff drought. So these comments aren't concerning from De'Aaron Fox at all. However, Fox has to understand and realize, and of course he does, that he is a part of if the team is going to meet his expectations. It doesn't exclude him. But I thought those comments were interesting when compared to and partnered with the comments that we got from Mike Brown at practice today. Now, again, I was not at practice, but our good friend Brendan Nunez from Sacktown Sports 1140 was. This is his video of Mike Brown's comments and Mike Brown's challenge to his star player, challenge to De'Aaron Fox at practice today. Take a listen.
Fox has to step up. He's a great player on the verge of being a superstar. And there are those guys, and there are the superstars that win at a high level. And part of his responsibility, starting with him, now it doesn't excuse Domas, that doesn't excuse DeMar, that doesn't excuse Malik, and even Keegan at a young age, doesn't excuse everybody. But you have a lot of responsibility if you're that guy, and he's that guy. And he can't be a part of not being locked in. And he damn sure can't be a part of letting it go if we're not as a team. And so the pressure is on me, and the pressure is on him to go get it done.
You know, I thought that this was excellent stuff from Mike Brown. Excellent stuff. Now, we have been told repeatedly by multiple sources, on the record, off the record, we have been told that Mike Brown coaches De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis harder than anybody else on that team. As the stars, he expects them to lead. And his belief is, his philosophy is, if he coaches them harder than anybody else, when he demands something from somebody else who's not a top guy, they better live up to it because he's demanding the same thing of the top guy. So he's not treating or giving De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis any superstar treatment and taking everything out on like a Keon Ellis or something like that. That's not the way that Mike operates. Of course, these stars get longer leashes naturally and can get away with more because of how talented they are and how important they are to the team. But I love this from Mike because accountability has to do with everybody. And Mike also mentions like on himself too. He takes accountability on himself of how he has to better prepare this team and get them prepared. But I love what he's saying from Mike here because it matches some of the stuff that we're seeing. You know, the Kings get off to that terrible start against the Denver Nuggets. And you look up at the scoreboard and De'Aaron Fox has like 4 points at the end of the first quarter, right? We know when De'Aaron is on, whether it's pissed off or whatever, when De'Aaron is on, he's impossible to stop. He can score 60 points one night and 49 points the next night, right? And this is not new. Challenging De'Aaron Fox is not new. And typically De'Aaron Fox responds really well to these challenges. Luke Laux challenged De'Aaron Fox to attack the paint more earlier on this season. The next 2 games, he scored a combined 109 points. So De'Aaron has been coached and challenged by this coaching staff before, and he's responded very well to it. This from Mike Brown is nothing different. Saying that the Kings are having these lulls and De'Aaron Fox is involved in these lulls, I understand that completely. Love him pointing that out. But the best part I thought of this soundbite was Mike saying like he can't be the guy that when things aren't going right, when they're not executing on the little details, the areas of focus, he can't be the guy that just goes along with it. He can't also not buy into those details. If De'Aaron Fox isn't going to be the vocal leader in terms of like a Draymond Green type who's going to grab players, pull them aside and go, this is what you have to do. If that's not De'Aaron's personality, that's fine. We've always said De'Aaron Fox is a leader by example. Great. Then if you are going to be the leader of this team by example, you have to set the example by giving your all in these little areas of focus. You can't take these plays off. Now that's difficult to do, and Mike Brown has pointed this out. It is hard to box out every possession. It is hard to crash the glass every possession. It is hard to give 110% on closeouts every single possession while also having the responsibilities that De'Aaron Fox has on the offensive end. No one's saying it's easy. But what Mike is saying here is these are the areas that the Kings have to improve on. This is where the Kings have to be better. And De'Aaron Fox needs to lead that charge. Because if Fox isn't doing it, then how can we expect the rest of the team to do it consistently? I really like those comments from Mike Brown. I think he's 100% right. I don't think he's calling out De'Aaron Fox in any way or saying anything that De'Aaron wouldn't agree with or say himself. And again, when De'Aaron has been challenged in the past, he has responded well. De'Aaron has told us straight up since Mike Brown came to Sacramento, he wants to be coached this way. So nobody should be interpreting this as, oh, Mike Brown is calling out De'Aaron Fox or Mike Brown is pissing off De'Aaron Fox. Fox isn't going to like that. Not at all. Not at all. I don't think that's anything to be concerned about. Speaking of De'Aaron Fox, let's go back to De'Aaron Fox because there was one more clip from his podcast with Draymond Green that I thought was really interesting. Mike Brown was involved in this. Draymond asks De'Aaron about Mike being a defensive coach and the Kings not being a good defensive team. Remember, Draymond's very familiar with Mike Brown from the years that they spent together in Golden State. What De'Aaron says about the roster and the personnel, it's music to all of our ears because it's what we've been saying and what we've been thinking for months. Take a listen.
I'll tell you what I'm surprised at. I'm surprised the thing that y'all have struggled with as a team is defense because Mike Brown with defense, like that's what he do. Like he guru. And so I know it'd be driving him crazy. So you got to challenge. You got it. This on y'all as players because Mike Brown, I know he loses his hair.
He lost whatever hair he had left, wherever it is. I mean, obviously I think personnel is a thing. Like we're one of those smaller teams. Obviously we have a legit shot blocker. So like you're fighting against kind of construction. Like you can't. Obviously, you're only as good as your personnel a lot of the time. So for us, we throw out different things and different looks, try to, muck the game up, try to change the way that people see us. I might guard somebody, then Keegan might guard somebody, then Keon might guard somebody. But I think he's making do with what he's got, and we've been better defensively this year. I think we were like 11 for a while, and then we had a bad stretch, dropped to like 20. I think we're hovering around like 14, 15 right now. But obviously he one day he comes up to me, he's like, hands me a paper. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it showed the past 20 champions what they were rated in defense during the regular season, what they were rated in defense in the playoffs. And I think the worst was like the 2002 Lakers that were like 20th, I think, during the season. But then they were number one defensive team in the playoffs. But this is after they already won a championship, so they knew what it was like. So they just the regular season
Absolutely.
in the playoffs, they could flip that switch. And he's like, that's the only team that wasn't in the top 10 that won a championship that year. So
Yeah.
he's trying to make it work. And he, as you know, me as the leader and the head of the snake, and a lot of times I'm the guy picking up or the point of attack defender. He's like, this is what we have to get to if we want to win. Our offense can be as good as it can be. But until we go out there consistently can guard somebody, we're not gonna win.
It's good to hear the star say it. It's good to hear the star point something out that we are all seeing, right? That the Kings have a very talented roster. The Kings 100% should be better than where they are record-wise, but they have issues, blatant issues on the defensive end. The side of the floor that Mike Brown is known for. The side of the floor that Mike Brown is telling you, we have to do this if we truly want to win and be great in this league. We have to do this better. And De'Aaron Fox is saying what we're all saying. It's a personnel issue. This roster is smaller, and that kills them on defense consistently. The Kings frequently have issues against teams with length and size and athleticism because the Kings can't match up with it. It's a personnel issue. And while De'Aaron Fox isn't on this podcast saying, yeah, my team is the problem and we don't have enough guys like this, we don't have this, we don't have that, he's not calling anybody out or saying anything negatively. He's just speaking it like it is. The same way I'm speaking it like it is. The same way you're speaking it like it is. The same way Mike Brown is speaking it like it is. This Kings team should be better and needs to be better defensively. But they also cannot be to the level that they expect because personnel-wise, they don't have the team to be able to play that way. Which again, takes everything and turns it all back on Monte McNair and his front office and says, y'all have work to do. As of now, it is clear this roster is flawed. Maybe it's showing to be a little more flawed than it actually is because of the inconsistencies to start the season and the struggles on offense too. I'll give you that. I don't think Monte McNair has put together a roster that should be one game under 500. This team should be, as constructed, way better than the way that they're playing. But they did not address clear issues. And those clear issues are continuing to cost them games. And we're going to talk about this more with the Kamenetsky brothers. You're going to hear them point out. Andy Kamenetsky is going to point out the numbers and how the numbers say the Sacramento Kings should be a good basketball team. And yet, they're a game under 500. I have a preview of Kings and Lakers with the Locked On Lakers podcast coming for the remainder of this podcast. I'm very, very interested in what you have to say and what you think about their comments on this Kings and Lakers matchup and the Lakers perspective, plus their thoughts on the Kings perspective. And on top of that, I want to hear your thoughts on De'Aaron Fox's comments and Mike Brown's comments. So send those to me at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by a number of fantastic sponsors. The first being Game Time. This is the app that you need to be using to get your tickets to whatever the event is, whether it's, of course, a Sacramento Kings game or a major sporting event, or even maybe a more minor sporting event. A theatrical production, a comedy show, a concert, whatever the event, check Game Time first, because more than likely, not only are they going to have the tickets for you, they're going to have the tickets at the best price. They have the Game Time guarantee. They'll give you 110% of the difference if you find the same tickets for a better price somewhere else. They have their Game Time Picks feature, which makes it as easy as possible for you to find the best deals on tickets at different events. And their all-in pricing tool is so simple and yet so effective, because what you see, the amount of money that you see per seat, is what you are going to pay. No hidden fees piled on at the very end that just punch you in the stomach and the wallet a little bit harder. These are all some of just the amazing features that you're going to get on Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances without paying a boatload of money for it. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton of money. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every single month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with rocketmoney.com. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
One of the things that I think is interesting about this, and one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, Matt, and set all this up, is not only are we in one of these weird new NBA scheduling quirky things where they're trying to cut down on travel, plus the NBA Cup, where now you have these back-to-back games against the same team far more often than you ever used to, but also two teams that are kind of in the same place, both a little bit disappointing, certainly to their home fans, higher expectations of where they might be. A feeling of being stuck in the mud. Am I characterizing that incorrectly with what's going on in Sacramento, that just there's this sort of general sense of disappointment where the Kings are?
Well, there's absolutely disappointment in Sacramento with what the Sacramento Kings are doing and where they find themselves at. But I mean, you brought up the schedule, and I'm not a big fan of back-to-back games against the same teams, but I understand it from the concept of, okay, you have a Western Conference team, let's say it's the Oklahoma City Thunder coming to town, knock them out. If they're playing twice, knock them out both games in a row in Sacramento, or have Sacramento go to Texas and play 2 in a row against the Dallas Mavericks or whatever. That makes perfect sense. The Kings actually later this year go to New Orleans and play back-to-back games against the New Orleans Pelicans. Makes perfect sense. It's the other side of the country. For an hour and a half flight, if that, to do back-to-back games against the Los Angeles Lakers and to have them be on, I'm glad they're not on back-to-back nights, but to have the game on Saturday be a 3:00 tip-off for no reason. And this is like, so I understand the schedule makers trying to limit travel and things like that. And the Kings and Lakers being on the West Coast means they're always going to be towards the top of the league in travel, just naturally geographically. But the Kings also had a road trip earlier this season, guys, where they played a game in Atlanta, and then they flew up to Canada for a game, and then flew to Miami for a game. And this was all in the span of like 4 nights. So congratulations that you saved a little bit of time with the Lakers being up here 2 games in a row. But the Kings, you still have to bounce around the East Coast like a pinball.
I mean, they're really saving time, Matt, because the Lakers and Kings play again on December 28th. Like they are just knocking out this matchup in a hurry so they can find extra time to send both of these teams all over the country in totally unnatural patterns. Looking over the Kings, one of the things I wanted to ask is I've been digging through some of the numbers, and it jumped out at me how Sacramento is top 15 in both offensive and defensive rating, just outside the top 10 in total net rating. They have a positive point differential, yet they are below 500, and they've never been more than 2 games above 500, and never for very long. Like, that sounds impossible. What the F, man? Like, how?
Well, it all comes down to, unfortunately, something that's supposed to be a major strength of the Kings.
Oh, I think I know where you're going, and this was on my list, but continue.
So the Kings, they add DeMar DeRozan. They already have De'Aaron Fox, who's the first ever Clutch Player of the Year award winner. The clutch time is supposed to be the Kings' time. Like we were talking about coming into the season. If the Kings can keep every game close, when they get to the final 5 minutes, that's where they can really shine. The Kings have played 12 games this season, guys, that have been decided by 5 or fewer points. Kings are 3-9 in those 12 games. So an area that's supposed to be a strength, down the stretch, close games, the Sacramento Kings are not winning these games. And it doesn't make sense why. They're fumbling them away just like they did against the Denver Nuggets the other night. A game which, by the way, they were down by 22 points, came battling all the way back to lead by 8 with 3 minutes remaining, only to completely fall apart and lose that game at on the final possession. It's frustrating because while this team is trying to figure out how to incorporate everybody and battling with all the injuries they've dealt with this season, they have shot themselves in the foot and fumbled away opportunities so many times, especially at home, to where if I'm the Lakers, I'm feeling more confident playing the Kings in the Golden One Center than I am playing inside the Staples Center or Crypto.com or whatever the hell you call it now. Because
I try not to call it anything. That's my solution.
The old building in LA, not the Intuit Dome. The Kings just
I call it the Forum. I keep it real.
the Kings just don't play well at home for some reason, and they fumbled away far too many games at home that they blatantly should have won.
But what's interesting, though, to me is that, like, that says the team should be better. Like, if you're looking at where the Western Conference shakes out, I mean, for as struggle buggy as the Kings have been, they are still, right there, essentially a 500 team, 12th in the Western Conference, and 1 3-game win streak from probably being like 8th. It is a really deep group, and if you were looking statistically, I mean, one of the things that I think worries Lakers fans is the Lakers are kind of the opposite of that. Like, all of their advanced numbers tell you the team should be worse than it actually is. So when you're looking forward to where you think the Kings realistically ought to land in the Western Conference, do you think they are better than this, or is this what they are?
Oh, I mean, they absolutely have to be better than this. It makes no sense not to. This is one of the most talented groups that they've had since the early 2000s. But it doesn't matter on paper how good you're supposed to be or how good the numbers say that you are or are projected to be. Ultimately, you have to win basketball games. And you could compile a list of excuses in Sacramento for why the Kings have lost these games or what's been going wrong. But the reality is none of it matters and nobody cares, because you knew what the Western Conference was coming into this year. You knew it was going to be a 12-13 team battle. And you went out and added a player in DeMar DeRozan, who is, I think, a fantastic addition and brings more star power to Sacramento. And there have been games that the Kings have won directly because on stretches where they've gone cold, they could turn to DeMar and just say, go and get us a bucket or 2 or 3 or 10 just to keep us in the game and to wake us up a little bit. So I'm not saying the DeMar addition has been bad, but what the Sacramento Kings have done is essentially tried to brush a blatant issue of last season and really the last 2 seasons under the rug on the defensive end. And lo and behold, the problem didn't just go away. So the numbers are saying, yeah, the Kings should be better in certain areas. The numbers are also saying the Sacramento Kings cannot defend the 3, and now suddenly they can't shoot the 3. And it's perplexing. It doesn't make sense. But what the eye test is showing you is that this is a team that hasn't put everything together yet. And even though there's so much season to go, with the state of the West, you can fall behind and fall out of it really, really quickly if you take too long to get things going. And guys, the Kings are in what I believe to be the most important stretch of the season right now, because out of including the other night's game against Denver, 9 of 11 games were in Sacramento. Like this, you battled all the way back to 500. This is the time for you to strike. You're on your home floor. You can make up some ground here. But if you keep fumbling games at home, and you come out of this stretch still at 500 or maybe below 500, now you're looking at one of the hardest strength of schedules and long road trips for the remainder of the season. That might come back to bite the Kings.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, on top of everything that's been going wrong with Sacramento, according to all the different sites I've looked at, they are considered so far to have one of the easiest schedules to open. So they really need to get their proverbial bleep together fast, because it is about to get a lot harder.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And this episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. You redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, and the possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members too. I love using points for travel, and Built makes it so easy to turn rent into rewards. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent you've already been paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use our link so that they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today.
All right, Matt. So things have not been, super smooth in LA. A lot of highs and lows over the course of the first 24, 25 games. Anything you're curious about? I can't imagine what might be of interest to people outside of LA.
Well, first and foremost, the Sacramento Kings want to know what version of the Lakers they're going to be facing. So, and I also asked this question.
So do we, Redick.
So we have ABC 10 has a bit of a problem here in Sacramento. ABC 10, the news station that I work for. For some reason, they've hired a couple of Laker fans that happen to work in this building, and they've been hounding me for weeks about, is LeBron James going to play? I'm buying tickets. I'm spending a lot of money to go and see the Kings and Lakers in the Golden One Center. Is LeBron James going to be playing? What version of Anthony Davis is going to be playing? I haven't been able to give them an answer, and I'm curious myself. I know LeBron's been kind of nursing his foot, and as of right now is listed as questionable for Thursday night's game. But guys, is LeBron going to be playing in Sacramento?
Were I to guess, he's going to end up playing. Again, it's purely a guess. I have not heard anything more definitive other than the questionable designation. I didn't see anything coming. Neither Brian and I were able to attend Wednesday's practice, but I didn't see anything coming out about that hinting that he might not play. AD's probable. And as far as the version of AD that Kings fans can expect to see, that's sort of a double-edged question. As far as his play this season, he's been consistently pretty good. But that matchup specifically,
pretty good to excellent. I mean,
right. I was going to say
a couple of real clunkers in there, but we spent the first 10, 12 games of the season talking about Anthony Davis as a legitimate MVP candidate,
and he's coming off a monster game too against the Memphis Grizzlies. That being said, this matchup with Domantas Sabonis, although starting this season alone 1-0 AD. He's leading that standings in the most recent battle, but it has been very traditionally Domantas Sabonis just frankly outplaying him and getting AD out of sorts on a regular basis. That physicality that Sabonis plays with, the fact that you can station him up high, keep AD away from the basket. There's a lot that has provided problems for AD in that matchup against Sabonis. So, broadly speaking, you could expect to see a very good version of Anthony Davis, maybe even an elite version of Anthony Davis. Specifically, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I will throw in the nugget. As of now, the timing of us recording this podcast, we don't know if Domantas Sabonis is going to be playing. Domantas Sabonis actually hurt his back. He took a pretty hard fall when going up for a dunk, and he was fouled by Michael Porter Jr. against the Nuggets the other night. Stayed in the game, actually demanded not to be taken out of the game, and finished that game out. Domantas Sabonis tends to play and fight through injuries, so I would assume he would play, except for the fact that Sabonis missed a couple of games earlier this season with a back issue. So we don't know if he's re-aggravated it or not. So we're standing by, and maybe by the time people are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, we will know definitively if he's playing. Keegan Murray also did not play against the Denver Nuggets, and that is the complete depth that the Kings have at the wing position, which means who the hell is guarding LeBron James if he plays and Keegan's not playing? We have no idea. Kevin Huerter is also out. So the Kings have been dealing with and battling with their fair share of injuries. Trey Lyles is hopeful to return and come back for Sacramento. So I know both these teams have dealt with their fair share of injuries early on, but another question that I have for you guys, because there's a pessimistic viewpoint on this from the Sacramento perspective, is in what area do the Lakers most need to get right? Because Sacramento tends to be the ibuprofen or Robitussin for the league, in the sense that if this team is struggling, if the Lakers are struggling on something, they will come into the Golden One Center and magically figure it out against the Kings. So what is this team struggling with?
I love this question, Andy. I'm curious what you'll say too, because there are really two ways to look at this. And, you know, some of the stuff you were talking about in the first segment relative to the Kings in terms of what they should be given the amount of talent they have on the roster. I think like the Lakers obviously need to get right defensively. Like they are bad. I mean, they've had moments, they've been better of late, in part because they are, I think, simply trying harder. They are putting out a little more effort. And the other day, LeBron comes back against Memphis, hasn't played in a little while, has significantly more energy, puts out more effort on that side of the ball. And the results, I think, help the Lakers with, certainly in the first half, especially arguably the best half on that side of the ball of the year. That said, they're not built to be very good defensively. And so you could say, like, do you need to when you say get right, do you focus on the stuff that you're probably not as good at? Or do you really think about doing the things that you ought to be good at better? Because I think for me, that's where the Lakers need to rediscover some of the stuff that they had early in the season, whether that's consistently making sure that Anthony Davis is the focal point of the offense, whether that's avoiding turnovers, whether that's moving with the ball, without the ball, getting guys like Dalton Knecht to hit some outside shots. Like, they should be a better offensive team than they've been over the last 2 weeks. And to me, Andy, that's where I would say they need to get right, because I think their best source of steady defense is going to be an offense that consistently puts them in the best position to defend.
I would say if you're looking for indications that Sacramento is able to capitalize on the Lakers, it's how much is Sacramento looking to run? How much are they able to run, even though they have not this season necessarily been a running team? The Lakers are abysmal at defending in transition, and they are easy to score on off turnovers. And lately they've done a terrible job taking care of the ball. For most of the season, they actually been very good at it, but teams run on them constantly after just misses, after even makes. And that doesn't seem to be the way Sacramento is naturally wired to play. But if they are looking to exacerbate problems for the Lakers, poke at the weak areas, that's the thing they will do. And you'll know, actually, I guess flipping this on its head, that the Lakers are starting to make even incremental improvements if they just do it better. Like against the Grizzlies, for example, they turned the ball over, I believe it was 23 times. They gave up 24 points in transition, which by Lakers standards means they were defending incredible. Because for them to turn the ball over, for them to turn the ball over 23 times and only give up 24 points off turnovers, that's like them channeling bad boy Pistons level.
Here's one of the things I'm really curious about, and you can let us know too, Matt, what you expect. The Lakers did a really good job on Ja Morant on what day was that? Tuesday? Sunday. Yeah, whenever it was the Lakers played. It's been so like these giant gaps really throw you off. Like, I don't know, whenever it was they played. So they started Max Christie, who I believe will continue to start, going into these games.
I'd be stunned if he didn't.
And they put Max on Ja, and he did a nice job. I mean, Christie is of their sort of guard, smaller wings, their best defender by a mile. It's a low bar to clear. Part of the reason, though, I think that he was so effective against Memphis was that they don't pick and roll a lot. They almost never do it. Sacramento does. Definitionally, every team does more than Memphis, which means the Lakers will get back into something they've been very bad at, which is pick and roll defense. And I wonder if the ability of Christie to have a real impact on this game is going to be mitigated if the Lakers continue sort of their very heavy switchy defense, because it won't be hard for the Kings to screen away that matchup. So
they've been extremely easy. I wouldn't even say to manipulate into the mismatch that you want, because most of the time it seems like the Lakers
just
are cooperating.
Set a screen.
They're cooperating.
Any screen will do.
Yeah, they're doing everything short of asking, who would you like to have defend you?
We can relate to a switch-heavy defense in Sacramento to where when the Kings played the Spurs in Sacramento not too long ago, the Spurs were making a push down the stretch, and the Kings had either De'Aaron Fox or Malik Monk guarding Victor Wembanyama on the post, I think 4 or 5 straight possessions, because they switched every time and refused to not.
Oh, we've done that.
So can relate. Can relate in that sense. I will say, like, the Kings have been at their best as a pick and roll offense, like especially with a Malik Monk led pick and roll. That's what we're seeing a lot now that the Kings took a page out of the Lakers playbook and finally decided to start Malik Monk. And lo and behold, he's playing better. Who knew? Malik Monk is actually good as a starter. It's almost like we should have been doing it for 2 years.
The NBA's 5th man of the year.
Well, he can't win the damn award, so might as well start him anyway. Naz Reid started and won the award, so maybe Malik will win it now that he's a starter. But I'm not bitter about that or anything.
Say bitter party of one.
Regardless, the Kings are going to definitely try and run a lot of pick and roll, a lot of DHO, especially if Domantas Sabonis is playing. That's a big body for anybody, Max Christie, anybody to try and battle around. So the Kings will try to do that. I will say, too, the Kings, while they haven't played fast, inherently they want to, and they have expressed to us verbally how much they want to play fast. And what the Kings have been doing actually really well over the last maybe month or so is turning their opponents over. So that might feed right into the way the Lakers are playing and not taking care of the basketball right now. That may feed into the Sacramento Kings, how they're playing and their emphasis on getting out in transition. I promise you this, the Kings will try to exploit what you talked about. Whether or not they actually execute it, especially on their home floor, that's another question. But what the Lakers can count on is, and it's usually to start the games and to start quarters, the Kings will have lulls. The Kings will have these 4 to 5 minute stretches where they're just not playing hard enough, and that's where the Lakers can turn the Lakers can turn a 10-point deficit into a 5-point lead, or they can build a 15-point lead in the matter of minutes because the Sacramento Kings will be kind of sleepwalking. It happens way too much in the Golden One Center, and I would expect to see it again.
I was laughing just because when at first I thought you said like lols, like LOLs as opposed to LULLs. Like, we've had that. We've had both. We've had lulls and lols. It is the one thing, and we'll quit here. But the one kind of little valuable part of playing the same team like 3 times in a week is it is a little bit like a little mini playoff where both teams get to work on adjustments and changes, and it's still really stupid. But so we'll see what this looks like over the course, certainly, of this weekend. Matt George, Locked on Kings. We always appreciate the time. Andy and I will be back in the next segment to react to all the stuff that we heard here. Thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Guys, this might be the closest thing to the playoffs both these teams get, so we might as well enjoy it like it's 2000.
The play-in there's always the play-in.
Let's not do that. I would honestly rather the Kings miss the play-in than go through that again. Truth be told.
We need.
I think the Lakers are contractually obligated to be in the play-in. It's how it's seen the last few years. See you, Matt.